Good day all. This is a video commentary on our Freeplay session with sword and dagger with my assistant instructors. I will be making some general observation on how to do Freeplay properly. I will also be commenting on some of the action to point out what went particularly well or what could have been done differently. It's important to notice that Freeplay is not sparring or fighting, it's a form of training. Freeplay is not tied to the speed of the action. You will see us starting fairly slowly and gradually starting to work faster, but again, the speed is not the objective. The objective is to fence well and properly with the ideas that we have practiced for. To iterate the idea further, the objective is not to win. The objective is to fence properly and to do the right things in the right moments. Freeplay is rarely done without a task. This is because every time we practice, we want to improve some specific area of our training. At this point in the video, I explained the guys about Freeplay, especially about control, intent, and being generous while we train for the tactical and technical standpoint. I made a point about strike I landed on Topi's foot. Even if I would have landed the strike to his leg, if we had been fencing with an intent to win, Topi could have stepped away from the cut. What is important is that we don't change the intensity of the exercise if we make a mistake, and start flailing like crazy if something goes wrong. What we should do is to keep acting in the same intensity, and when noticing that we would have been hit, or we couldn't have protected against a strike, or we made any kind of mistake, just point it out to your partner. After all, these moments are usually quite clear to both parties. It is essential that we do these things with control, so we can learn from our training. For this we need to be able to trust our partners, be generous in our exchanges, and to train without ego. Here we can see how after fainting low I get a clean thrust into Topi's chest. There was no need to panic or start flailing around. A mistake was made and I made an attack that connected fully. As Topi took it calmly and generously and I made it with control, that was it, and we could keep going on with our free play. Here we can see how I provoked in order to advance into the striking range and push in an overhand thrust to the chest while controlling the sword with my dagger. This could have probably been avoided had Topi been moving his feet. Standing still will take away your ability to use your body while making a defensive movement. So with that in mind, we should always keep moving unless we have a cunning plan to counter our opponent's plans. Here you can see how Jussi and I are not attempting to engage right away, but we are working on the wide measure. This is to get to the rhythm of our opponent and to make some tests to see what kind of plans they might have in mind for our exchanges. This part of fencing is even more important than the closer measure where we might attempt to land a strike, as everything should be done with a plan and without committing into exchanges we don't have an upper hand into. This cut would probably have landed on my leg had Jussi delivered it in full speed. I felt that I was late with my reaction and I pointed it out, as we should not try to cheat ourselves but to learn from our mistakes. You will see numerous hits to the dagger hand in this video, as we are still relatively new with the use of the dagger. Most oftenly the reason we get hit is that we have positioned the dagger wrong. The dagger should be extended towards our opponent tip first, or held back out of harm's way. Here we have a good example of Bolognese fencing tactic. I advance with a mandritto towards Jussi's left temple to provoke him into attacking me back. As Jussi attacks with his thrust towards my chest, I get to receive it firm-footed and throw a reverso to the right side of his head while parrying the thrust with my dagger in the same tempo. This was a bad exchange from me. I misjudged Jussi's attack and I didn't have the chance to protect myself against his overhand thrust to my body. There is a very important thing to note here. Even as I managed to throw a cut to Jussi's flank at the same time, that would have been a very thin consolation to me as I got thrusted in the chest in exchange. Here we have again a good example of doing the free play well. Guys are being careful with their strikes, doing lots of provocation and not committing to the strikes unless they have a good opening to take advantage of. Way too many people doing HEMA or historical fencing prioritize hitting one's opponent, but this is categorically wrong from a realistic point of view and approach to any armed martial art. The most important thing is not to be hit by one's opponent, and only then should we be looking to make a hit of our own. The Bolognese masters very rarely have us using our dagger to make an actual attack. This is due to the fact that when we are in the range of using our dagger, so is our opponent. Thus, it is safer to stay out of the reach of the daggers in general. However, sometimes the chance presents itself to deliver a stab or cut with our dagger. In this case, Topis both weapons are protecting his inside line, which leaves an opening for Jussi to strike a hefty cut to the arm with his dagger. Bruce Willis haava. Here I pointed out Topis sideways step away from Jussi's provocation. An active and smart footwork is essential to be able to defend oneself and to be prepared for the coming attacks.
Taas molemmat askelista jossain päin. Kyllä aika paljon salaisesti. Siinä on. Näyttääkin melkein.
Here is a Mandritta cut landing to the head due to a little too low positioning of the dagger. As we keep going on, I keep repeating the same strike to the same place. I keep doing this to give Topi a chance to get more feedback about the problem and at the same time to calibrate his dagger to a better position. This is something we should keep in mind when doing free play. In addition to training ourselves, we should also help our training partners to improve.
Lyhyen se yrittää.
Eli sä oot palannut jalan kanssa. Vähän niin kuin tämä on tässä on niin kuin kaiken muun päälle.
This is an example of the rare cases of how the masters, Delagokia in this case, advises us to use the dagger to deliver a blow. I signal my approach with a big and intimidating reverse cut to the head to make my opponent commit to parrying it while I close the distance behind my blade and stab him to the flank. This was an excellent counter thrust from Topi that landed because I stopped in my tracks. I had my dagger too low to parry the incoming imbrocata thrust to my chest. Again, see how there was no need to start panicking and changing the speed I was acting. Topi attacked in a proper time, in a proper manner. I took the hit without my ego being hurt and we kept training. Here you can see again how we start the round with Jussi by repeating the same pattern several times. When we practice fighting, it's important that we use some method to do so. In this case we're both using the same ideas and responses to find an opening to attack. There is also safety in making the same pattern several times, as we know that our opponent must react to them in a certain manner. On paper, it might seem a good idea to keep our opponent constantly guessing, but in actual terms of fighting, where a serious injury or death is a possibility, predictability is our friend. As we start to notice the patterns, we can start to break them to our advantage.
Hyvin jumissa mieltä.
Tavallaan pysähtyy tänne se liike. Enää nyt juoksua. Pitää olla tasapainoa. No niin, oli vauhti.
Striking the legs is something we do a lot in Bolognese fencing, but there are also risks involved in them. Here Jussi goes to strike my leg after an exchange that we had outside of the striking measure. He attacks my leg slightly off tempo, and I have a chance to counter it with a thrust of my own. Cuts to the legs can almost always countered with thrust to the upper body, as geometry works in our favor with these targets. For this reason, the low cuts must be done with proper provocation and care. This is called a double hit, and they should be avoided at all costs. In this case it's hard to say who made the wrong call, as we started to act at the same time, but what we can say is that neither of us should have been doing what we were doing. It is always our own responsibility to fence well and properly, as it is thin consolation to blame our opponent if they fenced wrong, if you got stabbed in the face. That said, these things will happen when you practice, but we should always avoid them by fencing properly according to the theory and tactics that the masters provide us.
Hyvä se tavallaan tämä harjoitus, kun lähdet tekemään näin. Se ei saa sitten niin näkyä se tehdään näin. Ja taas koko vartalo menee.
This was a good long exchange from both sides. We both provoked back and forth. Jussi attempted to thrust me into flank, and I got a solid reversal to his leg while parrying the cut with my dagger. There was no real mistakes made here. I just caught Jussi unawares with my low cut. This is just to point out how sneaky the low cuts can be, and that we should always be wary of them.
Jotain hetkinen pankki.
vasen. Näyttää sitten se sama vasen tuki on paljon parempi. Oikein jakaa nyt tuki. Vasen jakaa paljon parempi. Tai päällä. Vasen jakaa tuki on
Seeing my students having this exchange made me happy. There is so much more in historical fencing than just trying to hit your opponent. If you only concentrate on landing blows, you will be missing most of what makes the arts what they are. If you want to learn historical fencing the way we do it, go and see my Patreon page. I'm adding material on regular basis and also updating my older content. Thank you for watching.